Good morning. So, I was actually opening my Bible trying to preview our chapter here before going live, and I was thinking, man, I was actually maybe there's not a lot of great points to make. I mean, I can teach the technical stuff, but quite often we want more than just the technical. We want some application. But this is actually a very important chapter, chapter 33 of Numbers, because I mean, for those of us interested, which I am, it maps out the journeys from Egypt all the way until they get to the Promised Land. And so you can actually try and follow on a map, and they went here, then they went there, and you can kind of follow them along. And nowhere else, as we go through Exodus and whatnot, you hear the stories of the bitter, spring of Mara and this and that, but it doesn't really just boom, 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 lay them out concisely. So that's what we see here. These are the journeys of the children of Israel who went out of the land of Egypt by their armies under the hand of Moses and Aaron, right? And so it talks about them going down there, and it talks about departing on the 15th day of the first month, right? The day after Passover. Passover is the 14th day. For the Egyptians were burying all their firstborn, whom the Lord had killed among them. So, I mean, it adds some, I would say flavor, but I mean, that's the idea, is it adds details so you can better understand what happened in Exodus. And then they chanted Succoth to Etham in the edge of the wilderness, from there to Pi-hahiroth, which is east of Baal Zephon, and they camped near Midwell, and they turned back. And if you have a map here, this is my Sinai Peninsula. Now, Midian's over here. Does that work for you guys? Maybe? Midian's over there for you. It's the whole camera flipping thing. Midian would be over here. That makes sense. Okay. So if Egypt is over here, and if it's backwards, just figure it out. There was a path. Here's the Sinai Peninsula, and people could go down in there, but it was pretty much just barren wilderness. But there was a road that went from the Gulf of Suez to the Gulf of Aqaba. And so right where the tip of those 2 points, right, the triangle of Sinai Peninsula, you could go straight across. And Moses was in Midian, which is over in Saudi Arabia, when he was tending his father's sheep. And that's where Sinai is in the area of Midian. And so he's taking them back to that mountain. So he's going to take them back to Midian. Now, the way you would get to Midian was on the Trans-Midian Highway. I mean, that was the idea, was that there were people who traveled from Egypt to Midian, and they just take the straightest, most simple path from the tip of one gulf to the tip of the other gulf. But it sounds like right as they got close to the Aqaba, they turned backwards. They turned backwards here. And this is where God sends them down into the Red, basically to pin them in the Red Sea, where they'll have to cross over the Red Sea. So verse 8, they passed through the midst of the sea, and then they went 3 days' journey in the wilderness of Etham and camped at Mara. And so this is actually where now, in Saudi Arabia, when I was there, you can see different places, and they all actually have different, strengths and weaknesses of where are all these campsites. These aren't like, ancient churches. They aren't a specific, really the tallest mountain in the region. I mean, there are things that are easier to find. Sometimes there are only streams and brooks and in certain areas, and that makes things more helpful. But when you're looking for campsites that are how many thousands of years old, 3,500 years old or whatnot, I mean, it's not easy. So, but there are things we can look at. And so it talks about 3 days journey, and then from Mara they came to Elim, where the 12 springs of water and the 70 palm trees are there. So there is a place in Saudi Arabia. I mean, there's more than one place, right? But there's a special spot that's within walking distance when they talk about the days that pass. So that kind of gives you some, a radius of how far they may have traveled. You also know that they need water. Well, the springs. Well, there's a place you can go where there's all these wells and there's all these palm trees. Don't worry, I'm not leaving you forever. And my little bottle of water here came from one of those wells. Looks like it's growing something too, maybe. Go figure, right? When you put it in a dirty bottle you find. But regardless, I got well water from one of the wells at Elim. And then it says they moved from Elim and it camped by the Red Sea. And so we actually went to a spot that there is a spring. And they say there's really 2 spots where there's a spring of water, fresh water source near the sea. And so they say this is very likely maybe where they would have stayed because they need water. But then they go to where there is no water, Rephidim, and that's where the rock is, Horeb or Rephidim. And so they go there and they drink water from the rock, right? And then they get to Sinai, right? And so verse 15, they're in Sinai, and then it moves them around a lot. And so from verse 16 all the way down to 36, it's pretty much 38 years of wandering in the wilderness. So you've got the 38 years of wilderness there. And then it starts moving from 37 forward. It's the conquests. Now after that one generation has died off, now we see the next generation from Kadesh to Mount Hor. That's where Aaron dies. And then they fight the king of Arad in Canaan, and they go fight all these other guys. And they camped at Dibon Gad. It's in Dibon Gad, yeah, so Dibon eventually became part of Gad, but that was the capital of Moab. And eventually it takes us all the way down. They camped by the Jordan as far as Acacia Grove, a.k.a. Shittim, as they'll call it elsewhere. Numbers 25 would be, that takes us back to Numbers 25. So it really takes us all the way back to where they had the whole issue with Balaam and Balak. Now, verse 50. The Lord spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan, across from Jericho. Speak to the children of Israel. Say to them, when you have crossed the Jordan, the land of Canaan, then you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you. Destroy all their engraved stones. Destroy all their molded images, and demolish all their high places. You shall dispossess the inhabitants of the land and dwell in it. For I have given you the land to possess. You shall divide the land by lot as an inheritance among your families. To the larger you shall give a larger inheritance. To the smaller you shall give a smaller inheritance. To everyone an inheritance shall be whatever falls to him by lot. You shall inherit according to the tribes of your fathers. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then it shall be that those whom you let remain shall be irritants in your eyes and thorns in your side. They shall harass you in the land where you dwell. Moreover, it shall be that I will do to you as I thought to do to them. You can hear the cousins are over, so I don't know if you can hear all the kids in the background there. But here's the deal. There is an application for us Christians here at the end of Numbers 33, which is simply this. They were supposed to come to the land and utterly wipe out all of the pagan people, all of their stuff, their graven images, all their things, to get them out. And he says, if you don't get this stuff out of your life, it's going to come back to bite you. It's going to be an irritant. It's going to be a thorn in your side. Once upon a time, I remember hearing someone make the point, when Israel won the 6-day war, they're like, they should have just taken the Temple Mount and gotten rid of the Dome of the Rock. Oh yeah, it would have created quite an upheaval. But they're like, but since then, they've had all these problems because they've allowed the people to remain. And all this stuff because, people keep coming back. So they didn't learn it back then. They didn't learn it more recently. But for us, again, God will tell Saul to utterly annihilate the Amalekites. But he's going to let some of them live. And because of that, Amalekites will come back again and again and pester Israel because he didn't just get rid of them. And so sometimes we've got old friends that sadly we just need to get rid of. Yeah, I know it's hard to hear sometimes, but that's true. We might have an old DVD collection. We might have old this or that. There might be some stuff as we become Christians. We just need to get rid of it all because it'll come back and bite us if we don't just deal with the sin and get it out of our life completely. If it's something that's not of the Lord and from the Lord, then it'll never hurt us just to get rid of it and be done with it. so that it's not a thorn in our sides, so it's not an irritant in our eyes, and so that God doesn't have to deal with us later on as he had thought to deal with them, as it put. So there you guys go. God bless you. And it's Monday, so I'll see you tomorrow morning.